Hello, this is Paul Humber. It is May the 29th, 2018, and we want to talk about Joseph Stalin's brutal faith and the poisonous fruit of Darwinism. Some have the mistaken notion that faith and religion are linked inseparably with the confession of a supreme being. But many exercise faith in science or even self to the exclusion of God. Notice, for example, the reference to faith in what Harold Urey affirmed, and you can see he's famous for the Miller-Urey experiment, where they produced tar, not even approaching life. But in any case, this is what he said. Quote, "All those who study the origin of life find that the more we look at it, the more we feel it is too complex to have evolved anywhere. We all believe," notice, "as an article of faith that life evolved from dead matter on this planet. It is just that its complexity is so great. It is hard for us to imagine that it did." And it's good reason. I mean, naturalism is atheism, and of course, the complexity of life is profound. It's much more reasonable and worthy to exercise faith in a creator God rather than in nothing. Whatever serves as one's basic system of beliefs about his or her place and role in the universe is certainly a faith, a religion. Joseph Stalin, though an atheist, was a believer. His was a faith resulting in tremendous brutality. Nevertheless, a faith. What was his faith? Was it uniquely Stalin's? How brutal was it? The purpose of this video is to offer some answers to these questions. Often an individual's faith is firmly attached to a book of some kind. Muslims have their Quran, Hindus their Veda, and Christians the Bible. Writings of Confucius, Buddha, and indeed Mao Zedong serve similar purposes for others. In Stalin's case, the writings of Marx, Engels, and Lenin incited him, but to stop there would be premature. There is one man-book amalgam which may have been even more determinative for Stalin, especially during his youthful, impressionable years. The man was Charles Darwin, and the book, His Origin of Species. And notice the secondary title there, The Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. What do you think Darwin meant by favored races? Do you think maybe Caucasian? In any case, that was a book that influenced Joseph Stalin. Now, to document this, appeal is made first to a book published in Moscow entitled Landmarks in the Life of Stalin. It was written during Stalin's glory, around 1940, and was designed to set him in a positive light. Note, in the selection cited below, that faith in Darwin and his book contrasts markedly with faith in a supreme being. So I'm reading now from that book. Quote, "At a very early age, while still a pupil in the ecclesiastical school, Comrade Stalin developed a critical mind and revolutionary sentiments, he began to read Darwin and became an atheist. A boyhood friend of Stalin's, G. Gerdlich, I don't know how to say that name very well. He relates this story in that book. Quote, "I began to speak of God. Joseph," referring to Joseph Stalin, "heard me out, and after a moment's silence said," quote, and I'm quoting Stalin according to that book, "You know, they are fooling us. There is no God." I was astonished at these words. I had never heard anything like it before. "How can you say such things, So-So?" I exclaimed. So-So was sort of a nickname for Joseph. So Stalin said, "I'll lend you a book to read. It will show you that the world and all living things are quite different from what you imagine, and all this talk about God is sheer nonsense," Joseph said. "What book is that?" I inquired. "Darwin. You must read it." Joseph impressed on me. Now in a different book, on page 17 and 18 of a book called Stalin, A Political Biography, Isaac Ducher wrote that, and notice it was published by the Oxford University Press, he wrote that Joseph Stalin would read, quote, "popular books on Darwin's biology," and that in his third year of seminary, Letourneau's literary evolution of the nations was taken away from him. He was going to the library and pulling up books, and they didn't want him doing that, whatever. In 1983, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, winner of the 1970 Nobel Prize for Literature, gave an address in London in which he attempted to explain why so much evil had befallen his people, and he's referring to the Russian people. And I'm quoting now, over a half century ago, while I was still a child, I recall hearing a number of old people offer the following explanation for the great disasters that had befallen Russia. Men have forgotten God. That's why all this has happened. There's another picture of him there in the lower right. I'm continuing to quote. "Since then, I have spent well nigh 50 years working on the history of our revolution. In the process, I have read hundreds of books, collected hundreds of personal testimonies, and have already contributed 8 volumes of my own toward the effort of clearing away the rubble left by that upheaval. But if I were asked today to formulate as concisely as possible the main cause of the ruinous revolution that swallowed up some 60 million of our people, I could not put it more accurately than to repeat, men have forgotten God. That's why all this has happened." But did Solzhenitsyn consider any relationship involving Soviet oppression, Stalin's terror, and Darwin's theories? In his towering book, The Gulag Archipelago, Solzhenitsyn recounts an incident which apparently took place in 1937-8 at a district party conference meeting in Moscow province. The secretary replacing an arrested one was paying tribute to Comrade Stalin. The group, including the new secretary, was standing and applauding their esteemed leader. There's Stalin in the foreground with people clapping. I'm not saying that that's the meaning, but it's typical of what Solzhenitsyn is talking about here. And Solzhenitsyn said, even a single minute of, well, I don't know, I'm representing what he was saying. perhaps I'm saying this, even a single minute of feverish clapping consumes energy. But in this case, it was important to sustain the enthusiasm much longer. 3, 4, 5 minutes passed and more. Tired arms, but who could risk stopping? After 11 minutes, a local factory director stopped clapping and sat down. All followed suit, but that night, the one who stopped first was arrested and given 10 years. He was told, and I'm quoting, "Don't ever be the first to stop applauding." And so, in his book, Solzhenitsyn queried, quote, "And just what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to stop?" And he added, quote, "Now that's what Darwin's natural selection is, and that's also how to grind people down with stupidity." Henry Fairfield Osborn, an American, in that book that you see below his picture, "The ethical principle inherent in evolution is that only the best has a right to survive." That sounds like Hitler to me. This man was president of the American Museum of Natural History in New York for 25 years. This is pathetic. Jesus, by way of contrast, was concerned to heal the sick and deformed. He showed compassion for the weak and enfeebled. Not much a follower of evolution's, quote, ethical principle was he. He said, "Beware of false prophets. By their fruits you will know them." Darwin influenced Hitler, and 6 million died. Darwin influenced Stalin, and 60 million died. 6 for Hitler, 6 million, and 60 million for Stalin. The fruit that comes from Calvary's tree, however, and the fruit, of course, is Jesus Christ himself who died there, has imparted life, not death, but life to millions and perhaps billions. I don't know the number. Reject Darwin and his rotten fruit. Trust Jesus. He's the one that made you, and he gives life-giving fruit. Many invitations from Jesus are to be found in the Bible. I encourage you to read the Bible and trust your life to his saving care. He's the only one that conquered death. Stalin is dead. Hitler is dead. The bones of Jesus are nowhere on this earth.